Woo, at the School of Visual Arts in New York City. And that's my little fancy introduction there. And I was a student at SVA many, many, many years ago with my surly face and my little afro. Um, and I chose my school because of this poster. I was amazed by this Paul Davis poster that was hanging in my art room at Cardinal Spellman High School in the Bronx. And I was like, I want to go there. To be good is not enough when you dream of being great. And I love the painting. I love the way Paul signed his name. And I was just, I want to go there. Years and years and years later, Paul Davis painted my portrait. So I am like the luckiest gal alive to have a Paul Davis portrait. And to know Paul and to call Paul my friend. He's just such a wonderful guy. And I'm so lucky, and luck plays into this little conversation this evening. So, as I said, I'm chair of BFA Design and BF Advertising at SVA, which is a program that we've got probably about 800 students in my departments. That's just my departments. That's not the school. And this is me before I started the job with Richard Wild, who was chair, the founding chair for 50 years. So Richard wisely retired before the pandemic, and I took over that position and moved into his beautiful office and redecorated and got myself all ready, started school, and by March we were gone because of the pandemic, and I've been up in Woodstock ever since. So this is me hugging Richard, where really it's me now squeezing his head, saying, "How could you leave me with with all this?" It's been a crazy, crazy school year, as you can imagine, as you've experienced yourselves. I love books. I love to read. I love to take notes. I have notebooks for everything, and notebooks with leather covers, notebooks that are letterpress, notebooks from Italy. Just I have a notebook for every purpose, and books that I put pictures in, and stuff that I cut out of the New Yorker or whatever. I am a pack rat with this stuff, and live in a home filled with books, and books stacked up everywhere. So you are my people, and it's so nice to get to talk to people who love the same things. That said, I live with a lot of stuff because of that, and I'm always on the lookout for one more, and something else that I'm going to look at or scan or read or just sit here and stare at or whatever. Um, and it comes from a book called The Magic Castle, that I got as a kid. My sister got Cinderella, which was far uglier than The Magic Castle. Mine had beautiful type and just was so cool to me. And so this was like, how do I get to do this for a living? Who does this? Oops. And so it followed up with other books that I had, with this Bible that I thought the end paper was so beautiful. Didn't know what end paper was, of course, and my Archie comic books, um, and then Mad Magazine, where I think that I developed um, my sort of sense of what I thought was funny and clever and smart. Everything either came from Mad Magazine or from Looney Tunes. So my range is pretty small and pretty pop culture based. And then as I got a little older, came from stuff like Spec and 16 magazines. My sister got Spec and I got 16. And, it cost 35 cents. This is how long ago it was. And I loved the way this stuff looked. And I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know how it was done, but it was design, and design was cool and loud and colorful and all those things. And I loved celebrity pop culture. I loved the Jackson Five. I loved Michael Jackson. This is my scrapbook. And I, you know, I was sold. And I was like, how do I get to do this when I grow up? Anything related to reading, to design, to writing, I was in. Um, I kept stuff from my parents. My dad's, he had a little sort of pocket-sized Bible that he didn't look at very often. Late in life, towards the end of his life, he was leafing through it once in a while. But the type was so small, you couldn't read it. But this was my memory of him with this little Bible and this very cool picture of my grandmother. The music that you heard, the calypso, was what I grew up with. That was Lord Kitchener, and I grew up with that. My folks were from Jamaica in the West Indies, so that music is sort of my backstory. And so I have this from my dad, that I have, and I was like, let me photograph this and let me keep it. And my mom's birthday book, it was called it, and we used to call, as we got older, we called it Nola's Little Crypt Keeper. That was my mother's name. And because it now became like the book of death, so that everybody who had a birthday, then it was later, well, this person died on this day. And it was like, oh, the Crypt Keeper. So, I've got the Crypt Keeper, and my sister has the little Bible. And, but again, these were these really rich little memories of my parents. I'm very lucky to have been called by one of the post office, the Postal Service art directors, Antonio Alcala, to design a postage stamp. It was in 2012, I think. The stamp came out in 2013. And I got to design a stamp. I was beside myself, something I always wanted to get to do. And I got to do it to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. And the one for the centennial was designed by George Olden, and I was thrilled to get to do this 150th that's sold out, and they actually went back and printed more. So it was a very small by Postal standards run of 40 million, and they went back and did another 10 million. So what an honor. The one thing I was asked not to do when I designed it was don't use type. And what? And so I used type, and also did other versions, but got to set it in historically accurate type, which was the goal, not to fake it and not to Photoshop it and not to, do all that. So Antonio and I went down to Hat Showprint in Nashville, and got to set the type, and brought down a big Xerox, uh, and set the type letter by letter with Jim Sheridan, and got it to work, and then printed the poster that then was reduced to become the stamp. We went back and we pieced it together. Should this be red? Should that be black? And went back, and Jim would run another proof for us. And it was one of the most fun days ever for me. And it was absolutely the way to go to do this. And what a wonderful memory, and the generosity of Hatch to let us go down there and set the type ourselves, and for Jim to help and print 5,000 of these posters. The first 1,000 I signed, and were sold by the Postal Service. And yeah, this was like the coolest day ever. Um, and that's Jim on press. And if I'm sure that people out there, you guys know him, and he's just so wonderful. And we've pretended to be cousins. I shouldn't say pretended, we are cousins. Um, and we were out at the Ways Goose at Hamilton in Wisconsin a couple years back, and I was speaking, and he introduced me, and he went through this long introduction about our family history and how we're related and all that. By the time he was done, I was believing we were related, and he's just such a cool guy, just the definition of cool guy, and so talented, and so low key. So we started printing different versions when we were down there of the poster, in just to see if maybe the Postal Service would do something a little funkier than they'll do the split fountain or something else other than what was actually approved, which was the simple one. And so we did all kinds of different versions in hopes of making that happen. In the end, they went with the one that had been approved, which totally made sense. But we have these sort of a few special prints that I've got in my office, and that I've made great scans of and have printed for others since then. But there are just 8 of these, and it was such a wonderful education to go down to do this with Antonio and with Jim. And since then, that next year, I started serving on the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee for the Postal Service, and I've been doing that for 7 years now. We meet in DC 4 times a year, and I meet with the art directors another 4 times a year. And it's a committee of us, and we work together reading public proposals for stamps and making recommendations to the post office, and we write proposals as well. And it's like whoever gets to do something like that. That's such a this little sequence of events at that time um, were so I don't know, such a big deal for me, as they would be for anyone. And I was really afraid when I started working with Postal because everybody they were such specialists in history and in sports and all this stuff. I'm like the goofy designer there. But in the 7 years, I've really grown to love these people and really enjoy working with them. And I've got 5 more years on my term. Um, and then that's it. So my stamp was on TV, on the news, which was really cool. And this woman does not look as excited as I was, but I thought it was a big deal that it was on TV. It was the newspaper and all this, and it was like, yay! And it was a Jeopardy clue, and I was like, who wanted that stamp to read henceforth? That was me. I was like, this is my stamp. So that's like this whole thing, this whole postal thing that I've experienced these last years. It's just been the greatest thing ever for me. And so yeah, so I love showing this off because who gets to say they were, their project was a Jeopardy clue. Um, the stuff that I've done over the years, my stuff from childhood, which is what the thing on the left is, and I've got a bunch of these that I found a couple years back. These little drawings that I would do. Those were big drawings actually with flare pens, if anybody remembers those. Um, and it's not like this is any good, but it was like this obsessive teenage, preteen kind of stuff, actually, that led to, obsessive grown-up stuff later on. So you kind of see how you come full circle. In fact, when I worked at Rolling Stone, I it was the same building that Speck and 16 had been in when I was a kid, 745 Fifth Avenue. So it was like, wow, this is meant to be. I'm in that same office building, and I always wanted to work there. And this was sort of the grown-up equivalent. Um, I've gotten to design a lot of posters over the years, which has been wonderful. Posters for the school. I'm just showing this in context so you can see that it actually lived in the subway. This was part of a series of 8 posters for the school using different faculty members and students. And it was really fun with my friend Joe Newton. And it was to get to see your stuff again, in a magazine, to see your stuff on Broadway, to see your stuff on the subway. I'm a lucky person. This was, yeah, this is 3 of them. Debbie Millman, that's her eyes, T. Feller's mouth. Just, yeah. So I like to do things that have a little wink in them. Another series of posters that Joe and I worked on, there were 3 of these in the subway a couple of years back, not long after that other one. And there was a little animation, and this was on the side of a bus. And so, and these are giant posters. And when you do these, the school gives you 100 of them. And so that's 300 of these giant posters I probably have like 275 left. They're everywhere in my house, stacked up under the bed, stacked up under that bed. But these are like, check, dream, check, 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 check. So again, it's hard work, but it's also luck. And I don't discount the luck here. And part of a series of 5 posters that I worked on with Terry Allen, an illustrator in New York, when Obama, the first time around, was elected. Our executive vice president, Tony Rode, had this quote that he decided this should be the poster. And Terry and I made 5 different ones, and they used them all, which was great. So, show them your sketches. You never know. Maybe they'll use them all. And this is the poster. This was up. This is a 2 sheet, so it's even bigger. And it was up just recently in the subway, of course, at a time when pretty much no one's on the train. but but it was fun to do it, and I wanted to do something really optimistic. And we do these art is posters every season now, and so it was fun to get to do something. Art is heroic, art is magic, art is passion, um, and to just make it as loud as possible so you can see it across the platform. Um, and from that, my friend Zapong and I worked on this together, and I'm also creative director at Visual Arts Press at the school, so sort of the studio for the college. And with them, we made all these little animations. So that was really fun for all the different departments in the school, to show how design, art is faculty, art is going out to vote, art is change. Um, so again, I'm grateful to have these opportunities, and I don't take them for granted, you know. And um, posters like this, I'm like all in. And what can we do to expand it and to extend it into a campaign? Uh, and I know where it lives, so I need it to be bright and colorful, and um, you know, so to turn it to sort of the book land a little bit now, this is when I was at Spotco, I was creative director of design there, and I was designing uh, theater campaigns, a lot of posters for Broadway shows. For easily half the shows on Broadway, my group was doing every season for almost 10 years. And one year we worked on a show called The Good Body, Eve Ensler, um, Vagina Monologues woman. And this was we first did the book cover, and then we were going to do the poster for the show. So it's just this little series. And so one is the book cover and one is the poster. The left is the book cover, the right is the poster. And I show this just to segue from posters to books, but also to show you what life is like. That I worked on the book cover, and I saw it in Barnes and Noble on the way home, and I was like, God, her boobs are big. Like, what did I do? And so when we went back and did the poster, I took her down a cup size. And so it's only when you put them side by side you realize she went from like a double D to a C cup. But there's so many of these little stories that I could do a whole talk on just this, of the trial and error of the Broadway stuff. But I love books, as I said, and as I showed you. Um, what my world is like. I'm up in Woodstock right now, upstate New York, at the top of a mountain where it seems to snow all the time. And I'm a city person, so this always wondered what it would be like to live in the country for an extended period. Now I have, and it's just a lot of snow, so I'm always wiping off the car. But it's wonderful, and I'm very lucky. Again, luck to be here. So I've worked on probably 15 books now, maybe 16 with Steve Heller. This little pile here is actually missing 3 books, I believe. There are 2 more. There's the typography idea book, the graphic design idea book. There's a logo one and an illustration one, and then there's one that I'll show you that's coming out soon. And I worked on Outside the Box by myself, without Steve. But we've worked together for 30 years. And if you don't know who he is, you should, because Steve's written or edited or co-authored or something over 200 books on design, typography, and popular culture. And he the man. And his wife is Louise Feely, fabulous designer, one of his co-authors as well. And their son is this guy, Nick Heller, who goes by New York Nico, who a lot of people seem to know these days. He's quite the Instagram sensation. So this is a bunch of the books that we've done, but not all. Um, Sometimes I get to design the books, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm so not over it, but it's just like, I can't deal with this anymore, that I'm happy somebody else is designing it. And sometimes I go into that sort of obsessive land, which I clearly did here, taking me back to childhood again and showing things that are way too complicated. And making this elaborate frame for New Vintage Type, which is my favorite of the books that Steve and I have done. Although the one that's coming up next is I like as well. So there was new vintage type for Thames and Hudson, new ornamental type, and uh, new modernist type. So you see that there's the French version of this, and there was also a French cover. Oops, for the other as well. Up, going back. Whoop, let me stop sharing for a sec. Let me back up. There is back new vintage type. Okay, so when you go here, I had to redo the cover for new vintage type for the French version. And so I had to redo all that type around the edges for whatever the French title was. For new ornamental type, same thing. Do the French edition, whatever the word was like this long for ornamental. It was just like, oh my God, these covers, to have to do them twice and for like a couple $100. Like, I'll give you a few $100. So, and this, it's like, the words are very long. New and type were very short. So, think about that when you're designing. Think about if you ever have to do a foreign edition, that the words don't always add up. So every time I've had to redo the covers for these books, it's like But outside the box was my own book for Princeton Architectural Press. Really great people to work with, and I'm working with them again now on something that it will probably take me the next decade of my life to wrap my head around. But this was really fun, and it was collecting cool hand-drawn type on packaging, and it was outside my comfort zone, because my comfort zone is entertainment or politics or pop culture, and this was packaging. And so it required some research, and I put a lot of time into the research, and I wanted to interview people around the world, and I wanted to ask them different questions, and I'd ask them the same questions. Then I had to go back and edit and re-edit and tweak and then design. But it was a really great project, and my partner Joe Newton and I worked on this together, and Debbie Millman wrote the introduction. This was the full title, and I wanted to make it feel like, I'm erasing stuff and the French curve and all that. And so literally just took it with my phone, the picture of the French curve, and as well as the pencil and we put it together in Photoshop. So this was sort of, parts of it were very low tech, and parts of it were quite complicated, and it was such an adventure. And the good thing was that I had a tight deadline, so I couldn't not micromanage, but I had to just keep moving forward and keep myself on a schedule. And writing and researching and editing and all that was fun. And then the design became the biggest, not problem, but it was kind of hard, because I worked with an art director at Princeton who, the other books I'd worked on, I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. And this guy was more particular. And we went through many cover suggestions and many cover comps. And these were two early rough ones. And then this was the sketch for the final book cover that was approved. And then we drew it. But it was more challenging than I would have thought. But the end result, if you've ever done a book and you're just like, I'll never do this again, is when you have it in your hand. It's like this thing that you made, and that's just so cool. Joe drew some of these title pages by hand, and we tweaked these section openers rather, and it was great fun, in spite of it, being this thing that I always for the year working on it was like, I'm on deadline. And we had 4 sections, and this were our favorite 2 of the openers. And it was really just laying it all out across the studio, taking the work and putting it in these different categories. And I wanted to keep track of the process of how we did it, and I wanted to do some handwriting of my own. And we wrote a little intro. Actually, it wasn't an intro, it was at the back of the book, about the process of putting the book together. So that was fun, and kept all the sketches and reproduced those. So the book had a little humor, um, and a little behind the scenes, and a lot of information. Um, and it came at a time where all that stuff was really hitting big. A lot of cool hand drawn stuff and all the naive type and all that. So I was really lucky that it came out at a time we sort of rode the wave of the popularity of this kind of working. Um, and again, kept all these sketches and reproduced them in the book. And I can still pick this one up and be like, yeah, that was some year. Know that when you do this kind of work, you may make some money, you might not make very much money, but you do it because you love it. It's like teaching, you know. And so there were case studies, and this was one of my favorites. Michael Beirut at Pentagram redesigned nuts.com, but it was like nuts online. And we did a case study asking what the process was like. And, you know, Michael drew, did all this Sharpie stuff, did these, just drew by hand logos and typeface and all that. And Christoph Niemann, amazing Christoph Niemann, did these drawings. And they took nuts.com is like delicious nuts. I order lightly salted cashews from them all the time. And this is what it looked like. Oh my goodness. That's what it looked like. And Michael decided, okay, this should be nuts.com, not nuts online. And their sales blew up after that. And that was, this stuff look at how much better this looks. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. These bright colors. Um, I get to see the nuts. I get to smile. These cool little bags, um, and and they're delicious. And now I see nuts.com advertising on television. And this is the power of design and of great packaging. And this made this nut company that was, was okay, it made it a sensation. They even have a little kiosk in Penn Station sometimes. I'm like, what? Selling nuts? And the box, when you get your nuts delivered, looks so great that you don't even want to throw it away. So this just blows me away because it's like the school project that you want to give and see a kid really just knock it out of the park. But this happened in real life, knocking it out of the park, and design transforming this company, that was this like little family owned company into like nuts.com. So that's very cool to me. So there's this other book that, just to give you the full deal, this is a book that Steve and I worked on pre-pandemic, pre, and then got put off because of the pandemic. They're like, well, one day we'll publish this. And this is for Abrams. So it's finally coming out. We just got an email the other day that, oh, the book will be out. You'll get a copy of it in May or June or something. We're like, what book? That book? Oh my goodness. Type Speaks is finally coming out. This book that we started, So this one is Type and Emotion, and it's sort of silly and it's a bit of a stretch, but it's great stuff. It's a great way of showing cool typography. And we created all of these different categories that are pretty loose, I gotta say, but fun. And so I'll give you a little sneak peek of this book that I hope you'll enjoy, and wrote some nice long captions. So it's work from around the world, just like Outside the Box was. And it's a little stubby book. And I can't wait to see it because it's been such a long time in coming. And I'm afraid to even look at the PDFs now after so much time, because it's like, I know I'll see mistakes and things that's like, why did I do that? Why did we do this? And so it's all these great typefaces. So for you designers out there, got another type book coming your way. So I'm excited about this. And Joe and I really, especially Joe, I can't even take credit for this, went whole hog with designing it so that making these specimens uh, would just be fun, and would be loud and silly, and hopefully get some students to scroll beyond the obvious and find some new type and things that you may only use once in a lifetime, but it's fun and it's out there, and it's all stuff that sort of makes you feel a particular way. And much of it is very sort of optimistic, which is the right thing right now. And there are some Arabic fonts and fonts from other cultures. So there's lots of cool stuff. And again, it's this little stubby book, so of many hundreds of pages. that I hope you'll enjoy. Uh, and going back now and looking at it fresh after easily a year, I'm excited about it all over again. So so it's been a good run uh, for the books I've done with Steve, and for what I'll be working on next. And you carve out time to do this stuff. Can you read this? It's um, the humble cumulus uh, in this crazy typeface, protozoa. Uh, Again, these projects won't make you rich. Apparently, nothing I've worked on will make me rich, but I'm happy, you know. And it's after 35 years of doing this, I still get excited looking at good design, at what other people are doing. I love showing it in class. I love occasionally getting to do it myself, and I'm happy to share it with you and to share this first glimpse at this book. So someday it'll be out, I suppose, this summer, which is exciting. And so finally, way back in the first Obama campaign, my boss and my classmate, Drew Hodges, the tall guy, obviously the one on the right, not the other one, we went to Barack on Broadway. I got a last minute invitation because the person Drew was taking couldn't go, so I'm clearly not dressed for the occasion, and got to go, and we got to meet Barack Obama. And I've told the story 100 times, but I'll tell it once more. I got to embarrass myself because I couldn't remember my name. I couldn't remember what I did for a living when he asked me, and I was sweating and not dressed up. And when I put my arm around him, I had my hand on his ass, on the future president's ass, which was very high up because he was a tall man and I am not that tall. And I didn't know what to do, so I left it on his ass. And my memory of Barack Obama was that he had a very nice ass. So, and then I cropped Drew out of the picture and kept this forever, only to be outdone by my siblings who live in Wilmington. And apparently everybody's got their picture with Joe Biden. That's my brother Mike and my sister-in-law Jerry, and then my sister with as well. So, like, really? So the three of us all have our portraits with presidents. I'm the only one who got, like, a handful of ass, but yeah, apparently, Biden poses with everyone, so including my family. So so that's it. Thank you, and I will stop sharing. Yay!
Thank you so much, Gail. That was so fascinating and exciting and wonderful. And I'm just going to ask a few questions until we can
get. Is it about Barack's butt? Because I know all about
well,
that.
it actually ties into. I was just making a note that it ties in totally, because the thing that was the through line for me listening to you talk was the tactility of your inspiration and the things that you loved, and then you ended with grabbing Barack Obama's ass.
There you go.
So
full circle. Yep.
I just want to ask you, what's interesting is the idea. I'm just curious about you. You grew up with the tactility of paper and books and hot type. I mean, I worked in New York when I was very first out of college, and we would go to the type places, and and now I think it's like I worked in the 19th century.
Yes.
Because it's so changed. But what I wonder about is your students who have not, have grown up with a completely different kind of orientation to what their inspirations are. What's that like? What's that relationship like?
We have a letterpress class, we have silkscreen, we have opportunities, not now, but in normal times, for them to take something that's hands-on and, like, do it, or do it on a Saturday, or and when they do it, they love it. They do, which is wonderful. And they're willing to get their hands dirty. There's a 3D design class that they're building stuff, that they're like cutting stuff up, and they're taking drawing in their first and second year, and that's important so that they're moving their hand and they're making things. But I might also be like 500 whenever I talk about stuff because they're like, what?
Well, because even thinking not just of the aesthetics themselves, um, or the aesthetic itself or whatever, but also like your father's Bible with the picture of your grandmother, like those things that are worn by touch and that have edges, and that's so different from if your visual orientation is online, it doesn't have that kind of those smudges and stuff. So it's just so interesting.
No, and the kids that I work with and my nieces and nephews, they don't want stuff, you
Mhm.
know? They don't want, yeah. They're like, why do you guys have so much stuff? And why would you want these books? Because they're instantly out of date. It's like, no, 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 no. Uh, so, yeah.
Well, I commend you for remaining joyous and excited by
Yeah.
it, and having like traversed that incredible change in the thing that you do over the course of your career and being still really excited and inspired. This was
I
just
mean, when I was in my last year of school, they had at SVA, they had a computer class and they'd gotten some Apple whatevers at the time, and you had to learn X and Y coordinates and all this. And it was like, I'm not taking that class. Like, I'll never have to use one of those. Who knew? So, I mean, and at Rolling Stone, we switched over in the early 90s and it was like, what? Um, and I've adapted, had to. Um, and I get it, but I love a book. I love an actual magazine. I love my thousands of notebooks and all that. And I love a good pen and all those things. So
a beautiful stamp. I just want to say I was completely fangirling when I realized that I was going to get to talk to the designer of one of my favorite stamps. I've hoarded them for all these years. So, and now I know how rare they are. So, yes.
full of yeah. When Antonio called and said that I don't want to work on this, I was like, I'll come down to Washington now. It's like, what do I have to do? And he was like, hold on. And yeah, well, so
Exciting. So we have some questions in the chat. Fantastic work. Are the Make It Here poster series letterpress printed, or does your poster work start as digital images before being printed according to
which posters?
client needs?
The SVA posters are all digital, um, and were all started as digital. The one was put together piece by piece, the wood typey one, but yeah, those are digital. Some of the other posters that I've done have been letterpress, and that's been, if I could slow down and do that all the time, I would. And when we're back at school, I get to take a class, so I'm gonna take that myself. And was supposed to go down to down to Hatch last summer and do a residency there to print for 6 weeks, and then that didn't happen. And so I'm supposed to do something at Hamilton this year, so hopefully that'll happen. And so I'll have an extended period just to make stuff, which I've never had in my whole adult life. So yeah, so stay tuned. Uh,
Another question, what is the date range of the packaging and outside the box?
mm, uh, 2012, 13, 14. Yeah, 2000 up to maybe 2012 to 16, in that range, I think. It's pretty recent. That book came out, I think in 15, 16. Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark of the teens of, and then this next book is late teens. Um, yeah, so as I said, I was lucky to sort of ride the wave of the hand drawn stuff.
It's interesting though, because it's like it overlapped with a period of popularity, but it was something that you had always loved.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The probably a good thing for me though, the early books that Steve and I did, you would get the people to send you stuff, and then you'd have to have it shot or statted or whatever. And so I'd always have these collections of people's things that you got to keep. And in a way, thank God I don't have that anymore, because then I would have had like a house full of packaging, because I want to keep it all, you know. So lucky for me, I just have like a house full of scans, which is all on a little drive, instead of what would be piles of stuff, because all the books were just like, I'm keeping this forever. Uh, so
So in the outside the box, what's the earliest item in there? What's the earliest year that something is represented?
it's a bit of historical stuff, but not that much. I wanted to keep it pretty current. Um, and yeah, we went back and forth with that. I remember with Princeton, um, and so it's all contemporary packaging. Uh, and I remember researching um, online and through the Die Line, that site, and the research process was hard because, again, I'm like pop culture person, and it's like packaging. But once I was in there, it was great. It was great to get to do that kind of project. And again, these are all labor of love kind of projects. And Princeton is a great publisher to work for. Um, and I I've I've got something in the works now. And this kind of stuff, you have to do it, and you have to keep wrapping it, like squeezing it in around the edges of the other stuff that you do. Um, and you'll curse it while you're doing it, and then when you see it, you're like, I'll do another one.
That's why I do this.
Exactly. And you're like, never again. No more of this. And you just keep doing it. So
What are the characteristics that lead you to choose a particular type for the body of the book, um, different from the display faces?
huh. I have some fallbacks that I like for that I find really readable, and like I feel like I can't go wrong with Garamond. And there's another face, Philosophia. I have a few that are my go-to text faces for books, and um, I try to convince myself to do a sans serif once in a while on projects that I'm such a serif in the end. But readability and being able to, I think maybe because of the Rolling Stone years of we used Cloister, and it had a great X height so that you could really get a lot of text in. It was an easy face to work with, and so I'm always looking for something that's really easy on the eyes. Um, and and I'm lucky that I've worked with Jonathan Heffler for many years and known him since he's like a teenager, and he's always allowed me to use his faces for projects, and so I love using his stuff as well. Uh, and yeah, but I fall back on Garamond and a few others so easily, and those are just work with my vision somehow, my eyesight. Uh,
And this is sort of a related question. How far can you go with the distortion of type before losing legibility?
mm,
Unreadable.
do it. Don't torture the type. Don't torture the type. Um, that's my constant thing at school. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing with that? Um, don't do it. Just don't do it. If we had to, we could do a little, like about 15% maybe, but not more than that. And there are all these variable fonts now. Working with one called Lectorate on a project, and I'm like, is this the future, that you'll just be able to kind of do this like accordion with your type? And I don't know how I feel about that, because I want to make really deliberate decisions, and that I feel like people are gonna, you know, but maybe they won't squish it like. I didn't enjoy the trend of people squishing stuff um, recently. That and students were doing it. It's like, this looks cool. Like, no, 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 never. Don't torture the type. So
Somebody asks, going forward, will there still be a place for lettering artists?
yes, 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 yes. Absolutely. Um, yes. Why would you think otherwise? Yes, 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 yes. You know, um, it'll move away from the naive stuff from a couple of years back, and it's already returned to beautiful,
Mhm.
elaborate Spencerian scripts and all this other stuff. So and you can tell when somebody's just kind of knocking it off and when somebody's doing it right. So for those of you who do it right, who's asking that question, yes, there is a place for you forever. Um, it's a rare talent. There are a lot of people who can sort of half do it halfway, but yeah.
Have you gone
One second.
to overseas conferences, receptions? How's the current interest in type in other countries?
Well, I haven't been anywhere in a little while, but yeah, anywhere I've been to speak in other countries, absolutely, they're obsessed. So, and I spoke in Shanghai year before last, I think, and it was really cool seeing what folks were doing there, and particularly what students were doing. I spoke in Jeddah years back in Saudi Arabia and other unexpected places, and people are obsessed with type and obsessed with Western type. So that'll never change. Um, great.
Somebody says Gil Sans is the best for
Yeah,
text
I saw that.
and in the serif. Give it a sight.
You know how when I worked at the Globe years back, we used a lot of Gill, we used a lot of Franklin, and Bookman, and so I had those Globe years of just being limited to those faces, and so it's been a long time. But and when we were in school, Gill Sans Bowl condensed, and yes, we were definitely Gill people. So yeah, yeah, it's been a while. It's like wearing I wore tartan in grammar school at Catholic school, so I could like never wear a plaid after that. It was like that's cool. It takes a lot of years, so it's taken a long time to get back to Gill. So and even Franklin, it's like, oh, that's work. Let's globe face. So
Something fun next. What type traditions have you noticed abroad that are different from USA usage?
huh, that are different. Um, guess I. No, that's a hard one, especially because it's been like a year since I've been anywhere. It seems like 10 years now. Um, I don't know. I have to think about that one, and so I don't have an answer for that. I've been every time I'm surprised how many similarities there are. I think it's going to be really different. I eat more Helvetica, more Swiss, more of the simple stuff that's in its own way. I saw in portfolios last year making its way to how the students operate. I like it simple uh,
Mhm.
rather than what was I like it really complex.
We are very, very grateful to you. This was so, so, so much fun, so inspiring.
Great.
And we're all looking forward to your next book. And now we'll make sure that the whole run is in the PPL collection. Anything that we're missing, we will be sure to
Yeah.
fulfill. And several
Yeah, I'm
people.
sorry I veered off into all kinds of other stuff, but I wanted to show you.
Oh, it was
Yeah,
fantastic. It was a expansive life, lived in all kinds of ways, and all this beautiful work as a result. Thank you so much,
I've been lucky, so.
everybody, for coming. Please take a look at the AFA programs that are listed there, upcoming, and a couple of PPL things too, I think. So.
And we'll put those AFA links and the book links and everything in our follow-up email that everyone will get tomorrow. Thank you.
Another inspiration to open the email and the evaluation. So thank you again for a wonderful evening. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Janaea, as always. And have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Bye.